Hello everyone. Hakkar the Soulflayer was responsible for quite an epidemic in the World of Warcraft, brought forth by the Gurubashi trolls. In the very early days of Azeroth, the trolls, they had the time of their lives and they claimed a mighty empire. But threats like the Hakkar following the plans of Lei Shen, the Night Elves with their fount of power, and the first invasion of the Burning Legion, it caused them to fall quite far from grace, something they've been trying to reclaim ever since. Hanging out in the southern jungles of ancient Kalimdor, the trolls saw the land split apart from the aftermath of the War of the Ancients. This was over 10,000 years ago, and times weren't exactly easy. Poverty and hardship, caused by the loss of hunting and farming grounds, it made the trolls desperate. Desperate enough to turn to the powerful Loa spirits whom the trolls worshipped. One Loa answered their call. Hakkar the Soulflayer, the Loa of blood. The malevolent spirit promised to help the Gurubashi extend their empire across the lower half of the eastern kingdoms. In return, he demanded large numbers of living sacrifices. The Gurubashi, who pledged their loyalties to Hakkar, they became known as the Hakkari. They soundly defeated nearby packs of gnolls and tribes of murlocs, as well as the other trolls who opposed Hakkar. Those taken prisoner, they soon wished that they had died in battle. Hakkar, disembodied spirits, it gorged on the blood of the captives for years. Under the Hakkari's control, the Gurubashi had achieved all that they had hoped for, conquering vast patches of land, and even many of the islands that dotted the coast of the South Seas. While this was going on, the Zandalari trolls, with the Zandalari being like the big moms and dads amongst the trolls at the time, they were observing these events from afar, very pleased at first with the Gurubashi's return to conquest and traditional worship. Yet, once it became clear that Hakkar's bloodlust would never be sated, they knew that the fiendish god would drive not only the troll race to destruction, but the entire world. The Zandalari rallied their forces and set sail for the eastern kingdoms. There, they met with the Gurubashi trolls, who were not down with the Hakkari, the Zandalari and their new allies. They learned that a faction of Hakkar's most zealous priests, known as the Atalai, they were attempting to summon the Loa spirits into a living form. This in turn would awaken terrible new dimensions of his power and spell certain doom for the troll race. Horrified by the Atalai's plans, the Zandalari host, it stormed the Gurubashi's capital of Zul'Gurub. Day and night, their battles raged among the vine-covered ziggurats of the temple city. Finally, atop Hakkar's blood-stained shrine, the Zandalari defeated the Loa and most of his crazed followers. Despite this victory, the Zandalari and their allies, they agreed to remain vigilant for any sign of Hakkar's reappearance. The Loa was not truly dead, after all. His spirit merely been banished from the physical world. A number of his fanatical Atalai priests, they'd also escaped in the jungles surrounding Zul'Gurub. Finally settling in the Swamp of Sorrows, they secretly constructed a great temple to their bloodthirsty Loa, the Temple of Atal Hakkar. Deep within this structure, the Atalai continued their worship of the Loa. They practiced grisly rituals and ceremonies, hoping to once again summon the Loa into the physical world. Dark magics started to twist the flora and fauna surrounding the temple, which raised all kinds of alarm bells for the green dragon Aspecius Serra and the green dragonflights. Charged with guarding nature from within the Emerald Dream, she learned of the Atalai's plan to summon Hakkar, and she would not stand for it. Her powers were unleashed upon the temple and its inhabitants. The dragon aspect's attack, it buckled the temple walls and blasted its foundations apart. The immense ziggurat began sinking beneath the land. As the swampy mire engulfed the temple, the terrified Atalai abandoned their rituals and scattered into the marshlands. Though Ysera had thwarted Hakkar's return, she knew that the Atalai, they might someday attempt to summon the Loa again. So it was that a number of her loyal green dragons, they were commanded to keep watch over the ruined temple and ensure it would never again be used to bring such evil into the world. Dragons like her consort Iranicus, joined by Dreamscythe, Weaver, Morphas, Hazas, and a whole bunch of their kinds, they stayed behind and began their vigil. Yet smashed at the temple, it did not stop the powers of Hakkar seeping into the world. Over in the hinterlands, we have the Vilebranch tribe that make bloody sacrifices to their faceless blood god, as well as some of the Gurubashi that kept experimenting with forbidden blood magic derived from one of their gods, from Hakkar the Soulflayer. Its dark powers were so great that it nearly overwhelmed someone like Medivh the Guardian, so when signs of Hakkar's return arose, the world paid attention. Those of you who've been playing Classic once again, you might find it odd how the Sunken Temple is full of the Atalai and the Green Dragons are actually hostile. It took over 1,000 years, but in time, the Guardians left behind by Ysera, they fell to corruption. Their Emerald Dream has to deal with something called the Emerald Nightmare. That, as well as the returning Atalai, that is what dragged them into the bowels of the Sunken Temple. Now, fully back into control, the Atalai have begun their gruesome rituals again to summon Hakkar into the world. Thankfully, the green dragon named Aetherius, he noticed the fate of his brethren and he called for help from the Cenarian Circle. The Druids then sent an alliance force to cleanse the temple. These champions slaughtered many Atalai adherents, led by Jamalan the Prophet. While in deep meditation, Jamalan received instructions on how to resurrect Hakkar by using the blood of their draconic foes, the green dragonflights. Jamalan and his undead bodyguard Ogam the Wretched, they stand ready to oppose any who prevent Hakkar's return, but not even turning our allies against us was enough to stop their defeat.
The Soulflayer comes!
These rituals he found while meditating. They're actually to bring in the avatar of Hakkar, which we find in another room in the temple. We also defeat, or at least that's what we're led to believe. The plan given to us by the troll Jekinja, it has us pick up an ancient egg deep within Jinza Alor, within the hinterlands. The egg is used to capture the essence of the avatar of Hakkar, which Jekinja promises to keep safe. Per Prospector Iron Boots, he soon uncovers that Hakkar's true form, the god himself, can be born again through that very egg into which we captured him. The dwarf would be proven right, and by the time that we figure all of this out, it's already too late. With our aid, the Soulflayer will be reborn, and even now grows in power. Deep in the ancient troll kingdom of Zul'Gurub, he has come, and he will rule in blood and terror.
Come, mortals! Face the wrath of the Soulflayer!
When the Zandalari trolls found out that the Gurubashi were summoning Hakkar once again, they were shocked to their core. They saw themselves as the spiritual leaders and guardians of their entire race, and they believed the Loa of Blood's return would herald a dark time for their people. The defeat of the Atalai in the Sunken Temple was indeed great news, but their relief it soon turned to horror. Some of Hakkar's adherents, they had survived and were continuing their quests. They had quietly infiltrated Zul'Gurub, the capital of the Gurubashi trolls. There, they enslaved the minds of many of their most powerful priests. Together, the Atalai and their unwilling servants, they're now performing grisly rituals to draw Hakkar into the world. As it was centuries ago, not all the trolls in the region fell under the Atalai sway. Some of them, they launched an offensive to retake Zul'Gurub, but this ended in failure. The mighty trolls, who fearlessly stormed the capital, they never returned. Instead, the Atalai captured and enslaved them. Powerful high priests captured within the city, each a powerful champion of the primal gods, namely the bat, the panther, the tiger, the spider, and the snake. Now, the champions and their primal god aspects, they feed into the awesome power of the Soulflayer. Only their devs can sever the connections that are vastly increasing Hakkar's might while draining the other gods of their power. With Jindo the Hexer leading them, the Atalai are growing more powerful by the day. The Zandalari knew that they did not have the resources to scour them from Zul'Gurub, so it was that they sent word to the Darkspear trolls, who in turn told their war chief that the Horde needed to act immediately. If the Atalai completed their summoning of Hakkar, it would throw the world into chaos. War Chief Thrall ordered a large strike force to respond to the threats. 20-man raids went in, with the battle for Zul'Gurub being costly and brutal. We saw the Horde charging into the temple city, hacking through masses of Atalai and their enslaved followers. High Priest Venoxis, Juklik, Marley, Tekal, and Arlok, they were required to take on Hakkar. Next to that, you could also take out Bloodlord Mendokir with his mount Ogun, the Edge of Madness, Gazranka, fished up from the waters with a special lure, and Jindo the Hexer himself. Lore-wise, Jindo was definitely slain, but his death came too late to stop Hakkar from entering into the world. The Loa of Blood manifested as a force of death and insanity. He poisoned the blood of some of the Horde's champions, tried to drag their thoughts into absolute madness. Mind control and corrupted blood. It was Hakkar's own power that proved to be his undoing. The many blood sacrifices that he has received, it's given him a desire for it. His blood siphon ability, it allows him to feed on the players that are in front of him, keeping them nicely stunned while stealing their life force. In desperation, all of the Horde invaders, they allowed themselves to be poisoned while pulling up a Son of Hakkar to the platform, slaying it and then standing in a cloud left behind. With that poison running through their veins, the blood siphon, it still stunned them in place, but instead of healing the Loa of Blood, it actually dealt damage. In his frenzied state, Hakkar paid little attention to the tactics of these seemingly harmless enemies. His every thought was filled with an overwhelming urge to consume their blood. Hakkar gorged on his prey, unaware of the poison flooding his veins, until it was too late. The Loa of Blood succumbed to his own dark magic, with the survivors staggering out of the now silent city of Zul'Gurub, exhausted, weary, but victorious.
For the Horde!
Or so they thought. Hakkar's influence was far from over. As an unintended bug, it swept the world of Warcraft. You see, that corrupted blood ability, it was meant to just stay inside of Zul'Gurub, an ability that you have to deal with while fighting Hakkar. Except the problem was, the ability also hit the pets of warlocks and hunters, which could be despawned and stored away for later. One quick Hearthstone, and the corrupted blood was now transported from Zul'Gurub into, well, any location really, mostly the capitals where the pets were summoned, and the ability spread. Spread to low levels that nearly instantly dropped. Higher levels that could survive a little bit longer spread it a little bit more. Even the NPCs were turned into carriers, and since their health pools, they're usually quite large to prevent them from being one-shot, they stuck around for much longer, constant carriers for this outbreak. It became so wild that they've actually done studies on this. Recently, PC Gamer, they came out with an interview. Its headline said, "The researchers who once studied WoW's corrupted blood plague are now fighting the coronavirus." I found it really interesting. I'll link it in the description down below. Now, of course, a simulation inside of WoW, it can't be compared to real life, but I did find the whole human behavior aspect that they highlighted, I found it to be fascinating. So when people figure out that this bug was in the game, you notice that some, they started trolling with it. They purposely spread the virus wherever they could.
Hey, it's Corona time right now.
Some, they just picked up their things and they moved to other areas, or they decided to stop playing for a little while. They self-isolated.
Stay the fuck at home, stay the fuck at home.
The more heroic out there, they started healing the sick, which was great of course, but since it wasn't done in a contained area with proper regulations, all they really accomplished was keeping the sick alive a little bit longer, so more time to spread that corrupted blood, and of course also risking themselves getting infected, becoming a spreader of the disease. Blizzard themselves then tried to isolate infected players from as of yet uninfected areas. These strategies, they failed because of the highly contagious nature of the disease, an inability to seal off a section of the game world effectively, and, more than likely, players just resisting the notion.
Like, it's really messing up with my spring break.
Funny how you don't read about any of them cleaning out the auction house of toilet paper. Now those that decided to self-isolate them, they might have had the right idea, as the World Health Organization, they advise you to stay inside if you can. If you do gotta go out, then make sure to keep your distance from other people. Don't go hanging around in big old groups. Wash your hands properly. Avoid touching your eyes, nose and mouth. Those are the regulations in place to try and flatten the curve. Now for Blizzard and their corrupted blood problem, ultimately they had to push the reset button for the servers and make sure that the corrupted blood, it no longer applied to the pets. So yeah, stay safe and stay smart out there everybody. But we're not quite done with the story of Hakkar though. He was defeated during Classic, his heart taken back as proof of demise, the kernel of his power was banished. But Hakkar is a Loa, a powerful being, and we only defeated the physical manifestation they've been able to summon in Zul'Gurub. Over at the Sunken Temple, the Atalai are working once again to bring his avatar back, which we stop. But as it turns out, Hakkar can only truly be summoned within Zul'Gurub. The Atalai were merely testing to see if the blood ritual was potent enough. Now they transported most of the blood that they produced all the way to Zul'Gurub, where they're going to summon the actual thing. In the meantime, Jindo, he makes his return. After his defeat in Zul'Gurub, Jindo's spirit, it was tormented by his failure to serve Hakkar's wishes. He recently found a way back into the world, which might actually be the spirit that will someday references.
No! Where be the spirit? Where be Vol'jin? No! No! Impossible! The boss ain't gonna like this. Old one Sam not been losing a spirit and... Oh, this be bad.
That's uncertain though. What we do know for certain is that all of this is taking time around the Cataclysm periods, and back then we saw Prophet Zul speaking for the Zandalari, where in the past they knew that dealing with a Loa like Hakkar was bad for business. Now they got other plans in mind.
Divided, you are weak. But we, Zandalari, can offer you a future undreamed of. Jindo of the Gurubashi, would you see the greatness of Zul'Gurub restored? Join us, and the Zandalari will make it so. To see trolls retake the lands that are rightfully ours! And to crush any foolish enough to stand in our way! From the wreckage of the Cataclysm, the Troll Empire will rise again! Vol'jin of the Dark Spear, you would turn your back on your own people?
The Horde is my people. If it be war you bring, then I stand against you.
So be it, Dark Spear. But against the powers we'll soon unleash, none shall stand for long.
Vol'jin turns his back on this and makes sure that the Horde and the Alliance are aware of the threats brewing in Zul'Gurub. Jindo, now going by the title of the Godbreaker, he's brought back some familiar faces like Phenoxys and Mendokir. Kilnara has taken over for her sister Arlok, and Zanzil, he completes their party. They're the ones the world must face, not in a raid but a dungeon this time. Together they're going to rebuild Zul'Gurub, not for the glory of the defeated god, but to take his brutal power for their own and see the troll race stand triumphant over the broken worlds.
Now, have a taste of Jindo's true power! Your deceit is unforgivable, Jindo. You spit in the face of a god.
Not worshipped this time around, but chained up. Hakkar is pretty pissed with Jindo, so we help him out by using the Gurubashi spirits to break those chains until the Soulflayer is free.
You overstepped your bounds, Jindo. You toy with powers that are beyond you. Have you forgotten who I am? Have you forgotten what I can do? Be freed, insects. I will deal with you another time.
And that's the last that we've seen of Hakkar, despite dealing with a whole bunch of Loa during the battle for Azeroth. They have gone on record to say that the artificially created old god, going by the name of Kahun, while he is a blood god, he's unrelated to Hakkar. We also learned a fair bit more about the Zandalari history in relation to the Soulflayer. Apparently, there was once a foolish troll that tried to summon him to their island. This was many millennia ago. They too had to deal with a terrible plague of corrupted blood that tore through the Empire. Deeming it too risky for mortals to handle the dead, they summoned golems to do their work, the constructs and the boss that you fight while in King's Rest. Now the very first boss, the Golden Serpent, it was actually designed to defend the place after the summoning, standing against intruders ever since, judging who is worthy to enter the sacred halls. I do wonder why it was here at King's Rest, the place where every king, conqueror or tyrant who has ever held control over the Zandalari Empire is housed. Why it was this place that was so ideal for the Soulflayer to come. More on that in just a moment. The Blood Plague, it was actually studied in-game as well, at Uldir in search for a cure, but they found that only isolation and extermination, that was effective. Unfortunately, as the facility's safeguards, they started to crack apart. The plague was accidentally combined with a sample of Gahun's blood, which created a whole new entity that hungered for fresh victims, the Ray boss Vectus. But that still leaves over the question as to where's Hakkar right now, and I would love to see him get a part to play in the Shadowlands, as there must be a reason for his title of Soulflayer, right? What better spot to put him in than the afterlife? A whole bunch of blood sacrifices, as well as being summoned at King's Rest. There's a whole lot of death involved with Hakkar. A lot of the abilities that we deal with during the Jindo fights, they also relate to this. While he drains the power from the spirits, his weapon becomes charged with shadow magic. Phase 2, it literally drags us into the spirit world, where Hakkar is chained up. Jindo's spirit was tormented by his failure to serve Hakkar's wishes. But was this a personal torment? Well, he doesn't seem to have a whole lot of love for Hakkar, considering that he chains up his Loa. Hakkar wonders if he has forgotten who he is, what he can do. A memory that puts dreadful fear into Jindo. It could very well be that it was Hakkar personally that tormented Jindo for his failure. This could then relate to Bonsamdi losing his spirits. His boss is not going to like this. His boss potentially being Hakkar, the Soulflayer. All speculation though, but very fun to think about. Hopefully we'll get more information in the next expansion. I really enjoyed working on this story, especially the research and the similarities that we can draw to real life. As always, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it too. Subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time, see ya!